I remember, must have been a rabbi, I don't know, from Los Angeles, who started engaging me in emails back and forth on this subject. And then I got an email. He said, "Don't you have any pity for us?" So I replied with the Quran, where Allah Himself said to His Prophet, "Do not grieve over a people who have acted in this manifestly sinful way." After the 40 years in the desert, and they all died in the desert, including Moses, alayhi salam. Then the next generation, after 40 years, they were allowed to enter into the Holy Land. And then they fought under Joshua, for example. And then under David, alayhi salam, they were able to consolidate themselves as a kingdom. And he, the prophet, is also a king. We have a prophet king. He is the founder of the state of Israel. It is an Islamic state because his religion is Islam, meaning a religion of submission to Allah as sovereign, a religion of submission to Allah's authority as supreme, a religion of submission to Allah's law as the highest law. This is Islam. The state of Israel under David, alayhi salam, expands and it becomes a powerful state. And then under his son Sulaiman, alayhi salam, the Prophet Solomon, its power is further consolidated. And he also builds the masjid, which they call the temple, Masjid al-Aqsa. And if you read the Quran about that encounter between Solomon alayhi salam and the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis from Yemen, you will see implicit in that exchange between the two, the recognition, this is very important now, listen, that Israel was the ruling state in the world. What is the definition of a ruling state? It is a state which can impose its will on any rival. Israel is the ruling state in the world because no one can stand up to Israel and defy Israel. This is therefore the golden age. A golden age in which we, as the followers of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we share in the joy of that golden age. It is as much our golden age as the golden age of Banu Israel. Because David, alayhi salam, is our prophet as well as their prophet. And Solomon, alayhi salam, is our prophet as well as their prophet. But after the death of Solomon, alayhi salam, it is then that internal conflict led to civil war, and the state is now broken up into two. There is the northern state, which is called Israel, and then there's the southern state, which is called Judah. And in the internal rivalry between the rabbis of the north and the rabbis of the south, it is now that we have what the Quran has described in great detail, the rewriting of the word of Allah. The Torah, which had come down from Allah, is rewritten several times. An example is given in the Quran. Allah had prohibited usury, riba, the lending of money on interest, prohibited. And then revelation came down in which the Quran declared about the Jews and about the Christians, and remember, this lecture is based firmly on the Quran and on the word of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Firmly based on it. And of course, we must have the freedom wherever we are in the world. No one can deny us that freedom to teach the Quran and to teach the word of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And so the Quran declares, اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرُهْبَانَهُم أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ. They took their priests and their rabbis as lords and gods beside Allah. When this verse of the Quran was revealed, a man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, but the Christians don't worship their priests. And the Jews don't worship their rabbis. How could Allah say so? The Prophet responded and said, did they not make halal what Allah made haram? Did they not legalize? Is it not legal now to lend money and interest? Huh? That is their shirk. Whoever legalizes what Allah has made prohibited has committed the one sin that Allah will never forgive, the act of shirk. If you legalize the lending of money and interest, for example, you have committed the sin called shirk. And then he said, did the people not accept it? That is their shirk. When we go to the Quran now informs us that they made halal the lending of money on interest, which Allah had made haram. He says that's in Surah An-Nisa. وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَى. They were taking riba, the interest on the money that they had lent. وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ, even though it had been made prohibited for them. When we go to the Torah now, then we find in the Torah that someone had rewritten the word of Allah. And the Torah now declares that it is haram for an Israelite to lend money on interest to another Israelite. But it is halal, it is permissible for him to lend money on interest to those who are not Israelites. That didn't come from Allah. The Quran is telling us they wrote that with their own hands. Because of this rewriting of the Torah, and a lot of this information you will find in my book outside entitled The Religion of Abraham and the State of Israel, a view from the Quran. Because of this rewriting of the Torah, this awesome sin of shirk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now expels them from the Holy Land. And he speaks of this at the beginning of Surah to Bani Israel, which is Surah number 17. وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ وَلَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. It was ordained that Banu Israel will commit this awesome fasad in the Holy Land on 2 occasions. This is the first one. Making halal what Allah had made haram and changing the word of Allah. And then he sent an army which worshipped the sun and the moon and the stars, the Babylonian army. And this army attacked that state of Israel, defeated it, destroyed the masjid, and took Banu Israel back to Babylon as slaves. But wait a minute, the land had been given to them. How come they are now expelled from the land? Allah did it.